It is about 12 minutes away from 6 o'clock, and there's big news in this city today about big changes that could come to short-term rentals, such as Airbnb rentals in Toronto. The city is proposing banning people from listing units on Airbnb that are not their primary residence. And Lisa Marion is worried about that. She's an Airbnb superhost. She manages listings for a number of clients, including those that have properties listed on Airbnb that they don't live in. Lisa's with me here. So what are these new rules going to mean for your business, Lisa?
Well, it could potentially mean disaster for me and everyone else that does this kind of work in the city. It's definitely a new industry, a new way to bring tourism into the city and also create jobs. My partner and I created our business after we were both laid off from our positions, and we've done well with it over the years. However, we are the responsible hosts, so never having any of those problems that you hear about in the news. So we've kind of built it up from nothing, as have a number of our colleagues that do the same. And it's really going to hurt us. It's going to take away a lot of income from the owners, but also the people that we employ.
And so can you explain, I mean, all of your Airbnb clients may lose their listings because they're not places where they reside themselves. Why are they doing this? Why are they managing multiple properties as opposed to putting them on the long-term rental market?
Well, in the case of our clients, a lot of the properties couldn't go on the long-term market anyway.
Why not?
Well, they're kept because they're pied-à-terres for those people that have to travel a lot, or perhaps they've lived in them before and then they've moved away but want to keep a residence in the city for their children to attend school. And so they visit from time to time. Almost all of my clients use their properties throughout the year. So in that instance, you can't put those on the long-term rental market. So what do you do instead? You know, you may as well rent them out and help cover the costs of maintaining those.
Part of the city's argument is that Airbnb listings are preventing long-term tenants from moving into a neighborhood, adding to a community, which in their view is better than having, a revolving door of tourists. What's your response to that?
Well, I think you need to remember that in Toronto, being the huge city that we are, it's a bit revolving with residents anyway. That's sort of the first point I would say. The other thing is that in my experience, a lot of the people that we do get coming to our properties are coming here to live. And they need a temporary place to stay while they find somewhere to live on a permanent basis. So we do help them in those cases. We also get a lot of locals that stay with us while their homes are being renovated. So again, it's like, do you want to be paying up to $500 a night at a hotel, or do you want to stay in a nice, comfortable home?
So you're also an Airbnb host yourself.
I am.
As well as running the business for others. Your listing would fall within the rules. But what's the financial loss for someone? Like, just to put some numbers to this, for somebody who may lose this as an extra source of income, give us a sense as to what impact that has on the bottom line.
Well, they would lose a lot of their covering costs for things like mortgage and hydro. So each property is different, of course. Like a 1-bedroom is going to cost different from a 4-bedroom house. So I can't really throw out a number there. But
in terms of the potential income that's going to be lost as well, in addition to those covering costs.
Well, it's again, it depends a lot on the type of property, where it is, and how busy it is. But generally, you can expect to earn more than a little bit more than market rate on Airbnb rentals. So whatever your place would rent at, maybe up to $1,000 more.
All right, I want to bring Councillor Joe Cressy into this conversation. His ward, Trinity Spadina, has hundreds of Airbnb listings. And Councillor Cressy, you're one of the people supporting the city's push for these new proposals. So what's your response when you hear Lisa's concerns, particularly to the point that a lot of the listings that she manages, the properties wouldn't be able to be used for any other way? They're not candidates for long-term rental.
Well, I'm obviously sympathetic to anybody who's established a business model which, due to regulatory changes, is going to be impacted. But my focus is on the housing affordability in this city. And so home sharing whereby you rent a room or a unit in your house should be regulated. And the city is working to make sure that it is regulated and it's allowed. But the systematic removal of rental housing off of the market to be used as Airbnb, which, as we just heard, is more profitable than rental housing, is a problem. I'll tell you, in Kensington Market, for example, in my ward, last month there were 12 units for rent in Kensington Market and over 130 Airbnb listings. And that's because in my neighborhood, we have people buying up properties, forcing out rental tenants, and instead turning it into Airbnb.
It does also, those Airbnb units are bringing all kinds of tourism dollars into the city. I mean, there's a negative aspect to that, the revolving door I mentioned earlier, but those kinds of neighborhoods are generating big tourism dollars for the city.
Well, we have an obligation as a city to ensure a couple things. One, that it is a livable place for the residents who live here, which means that they can access rental housing when they need it. Right now, you can't. We have a vacancy rate of 1.3% in the city. It should be 3%. So we should make sure that it's livable for people who live here, and we should also make sure that it's economically prosperous for the city as a whole.
What do these rules, though, do specifically for that access to affordable housing in the city?
So currently in Airbnb, there are 7,600 properties or thereabouts, which are people who are renting out rooms in their house, true home sharing. But then there are 3,200 properties which are investor-driven models, whereby people are turning rental housing, what would be rental housing, into Airbnb housing. So let me give you a real example. 299 Augusta, this is in Kensington Market. We as the city approved a development which was to have 3 rental housing units. Rental housing in the neighborhood which we need. All 3 of those units are currently Airbnb. 38 Kensington Place. This is a building that had more than 24 renters living there. An investor bought the building, has systematically forced out all of the rental housing tenants, and now they're Airbnb listings. And so home sharing should be allowed. People should be allowed to use homes or units in their house, their primary residence, their apartment, to rent out. But dehousing people to create a new economic model isn't one the city should support.
Lisa, you're nodding along. What is your reaction to this?
I do agree with Councillor Cressy. I don't think that investors or people should be forcing tenants out of their homes. It's absolutely against what, I guess, Airbnb and this sort of model started out as. I know my company, H&P Properties, we have a stance that this is not how we do business. And I think we just need to find a better medium, like a happy medium for everybody, where we can allow owners to sort of do what they want with their properties within the law, but also help with the affordable housing crisis, which we do acknowledge is a problem here.
We just got an email from Tom who says people who own an extra house or apartment in Toronto do not need extra income. These people are driving rents out of the reach of the working poor. That is certainly the perspective of some of our listeners. Councillor Cressy, just really quickly, what comes next now that for the city to see these regulations actually approved, their recommendations at this point?
So the city has spent more than a year developing these in consultations. They'll be at the executive committee next Monday, where the mayor's executive committee will consider them. And if passed, over the coming months, the details and the specific policy bylaws will be written, and it will come back to council for final approval later this year.
All right. I appreciate both of you being here and having this conversation. Lisa Marion is an Airbnb superhost and manages listings for clients. And Councillor Joe Cressy represents Trinity Spadina ward that has all kinds of Airbnb listings in it, some he mentioned in Kensington Market and elsewhere. Your thoughts welcome on this conversation, an ongoing one in this city, at here and now at cbc.ca, or send us a tweet at CBC Here and Now.